so welcome. Thank y'all for being here. And let's see, I think I got everything on my end. Hi, everybody. Hi. Okay. So we're going to hop right in because we're running a few minutes late and getting it all up and started. And I want to honor our time. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to spend some time this afternoon talking a little bit about the rest of the 5 elements, and then we'll do another demo so that you can really, it's really about seeing it in action, right? By now, I think you probably see it's easier when you're seeing it. So let me share. So today we're going to look directly at the handouts so that as we talk about things, we can talk about things kind of more cohesively by what you have in your hand. And so I'm gonna talk about the elements a little bit so that you get a sense of the elements. But the thing about the elements is it takes working with them again and again and again and really reading through the packet, really sitting with the different archetypes and then observing around you to start to really embody the archetypes of the 5 elements. Because I could teach you, and I'm going to go through them again and again and again, but it doesn't really sink in until you start to use it and see it, right? So I'm going to go through some of these archetypes. I don't want to spend a ton of time kind of reading what's in the packet to you. I really would rather get into the demo and show you on the Genius, but I do want to have a chance to kind of touch base on what's here. What are the other archetypes? So last time we worked on water, we started in water, and we kind of went through all of the information for water because I wanted you to get a sense of what was there. And also, so many things are going to start with a water dysregulation because of fear, right? So it's really good to get a sense of what's going on when you're working with water. And so we kind of laid that foundation. And today I want to talk about the other elements kind of quickly, and then we'll go back to talking about how they are in relationship. So the wood energy is, so if you're going around that circle, you're moving from water to wood, right? And in the cycle, in the flow cycle, remember, it goes from water to wood to fire to earth and to metal. And so the wood energy then is kind of the new potential. It's new beginnings. The archetype of wood is spring. It's the spring season. And it's really this archetype that is about what is our life pathway, our life purpose, which is rooted, if you think about wood energy, it's rooted in that water. And that water energy, remember, is source energy. It's that connection to all, that connection to the higher self. And so from that connection to the higher self, we rise into our life purpose. And that's what the wood energy is really about as an archetype. And so we see it characteristically as it has a lot of energy of new potentials, early spring growth. So I want you to think about the springing forward from being coiled in tightly into the water, and then it springs forward. So it's an action-oriented archetype. And so you see it a lot associated with things like ambition and drive and courage. And really what that is about is the courage to live your life plan. So the liver is it's kind of the overseer, the director of what's the life plan is. And then in wood, you have the liver and the gallbladder, and the gallbladder is what makes it makes the decisions and it makes stuff happen, right? So it's they work together in order for you to live out your life purpose. So you can imagine that some of the emotions that are associated with wood energy have to do with things that get in the way of us really living our life purpose. And when we are out of alignment, sometimes I talk in those terms. So when we're out of alignment, that means that our wood is not really rooted in our true self, and we are living a life plan that isn't maybe necessarily fully with what we're here to do or who we're here to be. And when I say life plan, I do not mean your career. although our careers sometimes line up with it for sure, but really our life purpose is much bigger than our careers. It's who we are wherever we are. And so it's our inner leader. It's who we're living in alignment, is being in that internal leadership role, like knowing who I am here to be and then living that in every interaction that I have. And that might be in my career, but it also might be in my role as a partner, or in my case, I have kids, so my role as mom, or in my role just being who I am in the grocery store, right? So it's like, it's inner leadership, and the wood energy is about living that life purpose and who you're meant to be and how you're meant to move through the world everywhere. And it's rooted in that higher self energy, right? So we would call this heart-centered leadership. And heart-centered leadership comes from the heart chakra. So the wood energy in this, in 5 elements, is associated with the heart chakra. So you can think about it as because it's the energy of new potentials, it's going to have a lot of creativity that comes from water and imagination, where it pulls it into fire. It's new ideas and being able to collate new ideas into an action plan and act it out. So when it gets out of balance, we often see that people can't gather their thoughts, can't move forward, can't make the decisions necessarily. They might be too strict and authoritarian. They may get, you can see wood as that really dictator side of leadership, but you can also see it as wood that's too bendable, not great boundaries, not knowing how to have that backbone, right? That energy that comes up from water that makes the tree grow tall and firm, but fluid. And so from a wood perspective, if you look at the tree as it grows, you want to see that the tree is sturdy, it's rooted deeply, and it is able to weather the storm, right? So the liver energy actually helps us control our emotions, or it doesn't control our emotions, but it kind of guides the emotions. And so you can think about emotions as like the storm in the leaves of the tree. It doesn't change the tree. The tree is able to weather that storm of emotions, but stay deeply rooted, right? So that's kind of the general energy of wood. When it's in balance, we see people have a ton of enthusiasm. They're eager to achieve. They're achievement driven. We see this as like a lot of talk in wood has to do with motivation and achievement and winning, right? There can be all of those kinds of energies, but it's an explorer energy. Like it wants to explore, it wants new territory, it wants new potential, new territory. And so we also see it in that kind of sense, the explorer. It is courage in the sense of the courage to live out our life plan, right? Not necessarily courage just to go up against things, but the courage that it takes to live in alignment, which often means you're having to set boundaries and say no to people and do things that people don't think you should, right? So it's you have to kind of stand up to all of that. It's the ability to survive and thrive. It's helping others to, like, it's a good coach, right? When wood energy is warm and it's young, it's rising, it's outward. And when it's really centered in the heart and really open and flowing, then it's a great coach. I like to say, like, if you guys know the TV show Ted Lasso is a wood-based coach, right? Like he's really centered in his heart and he leads from that place. And that's a really great wood archetype when it's in balance. When it's out of balance, it's a dictator, right? So it's like thinking about like that rigidity, or it's too fluid and it has no leadership, right? So it helps people to focus on what's possible and not what's wrong, which can often happen from the water perspective. It helps us to push through our negative thinking so that we can attain our dreams. It takes us beyond the fear and towards what we want. It generally, wood types like to physically exercise. It needs to move. It has a movement. It likes to plan goals. It likes to achieve goals. It likes to move. Freedom is the thing. So when we look at wood, it's like, am I free or am I trapped? And when we see those, what we see from that, the result of that is often anger, the feeling of being entrapped, creates anger, right? Like that you can't change the situation. We'll talk about that in just a second. So, and then out of balance, like I've said, it's irritated or angry. Angry is the one that it's most associated with. It's the inability to stay focused or see things through to completion. It's frustrated with people who aren't moving as quickly as we want them to. It can be super focused on winning and lose sight of the purpose of what's going on. It can become authoritarian or controlling. It can be sensitive to criticism. So like, don't criticize me, but I'll criticize you kind of energy. You can also see a little bit of narcissism in that side of extreme wood energy. It can lose its direction or its clarity, not able to make decisions, can have a lack of boundary. It tends to kind of burn out from exhaustion, especially if it's not in alignment. And it can have racing mind, especially waking up with racing mind. So when you're looking for a wood in balance, you're listening for anger and frustration is usually a really great way to hear what's going on with somebody's wood. So that's one of the keys, right? Like if they're really frustrated, then it's like, what is causing that frustration? Often it's they have an expectation that's not being met. And when that's happening, it's getting their wood out of balance in some kind of way. And you're going to see other symptoms of their wood show up. So the emotions that are associated with wood are anger and rage, wrath, resentment, irritability, all the things that go around anger and the different levels of the brain. You can also see bitterness. And then on that weak side, you see helplessness or not being able to set the boundaries to move forward. It can be totally a lack of engagement, no motivation, right? But when wood is in harmony, we see love. That's that heart-centered leadership. It leads with love because it's moving towards fire. And so fire is the energy of connection. So when the wood is good, then it's feeding the fire of love and connection. We see people with good motivation with the right kind of motivation, not being motivated by guilt or having to do things, but by that drive to live their life purpose. They're assertive without being angry. They tend to be humble. They create transformation wherever they're going because they're leading from that heart center. They're content and they're happy, right? And that's wood types, but it's also anyone's wood, right? So we want to look for the common areas to look for are anger or feeling trapped, where someone might feel trapped or feeling stuck or not, where you can tell they're not quite living in their alignment with their life plan. Again, their life plan and their life purpose are not necessarily their career, although their career can be a part of that wheel. It's really about who are they here to be and how are they living in alignment. When we get over to the human design side of this, which we're going to start talking about next week, it's not necessarily that I'm giving you all of the human design, but the reason why I added it into this masterclass, it's a little much to add to this masterclass. We could have slowed down and done just really a lot of work with the elements, but I found that it's really important to keep things in harmony in the 5 elements, helping people live in alignment with their type. Really key. That's like key, right? And so when people are not in alignment with their type in their human design, I often see wood imbalances. And we'll talk about that more when we get to human design. So, okay. And then you can also see them kind of restless, looking for more adventure. They might not be, have what it takes to be in their leadership. And so, that's kind of what you're looking for when you're looking for a wood in balance, or you're listening. I often say you're not necessarily looking, although with the genius you are looking, right? But also you're listening to what they're telling you, and where they're getting stuck and frustrated. Again, on every one of these pages, you'll have a genius protocol where you can add these things in to help harmonize anger, and then check to see how they're feeling afterwards, right? We'll do that when we get to the demo today. So the next element in the wheel is the fire element. And the fire element is made up of 4 meridians. It's the heart, the small intestine, the triple heater, and the pericardium. And there's a long, we'll, in NeuroCohesion, the course, we'll go into why those four things are happening, why this one has four and everyone else has two. But ultimately, what you want to know is that for what you need to know so far is that there's four that are associated with fire, which I call the magician and the archetypes, but we're really talking about the fire element. So when we get up into the magician or to the fire element, we're talking about the archetype of connection. Remember, we're moving from that heart-centered being. I live with such, if you've ever met someone who is living their life purpose, they tend to exude joy, right? They live from a state of joy. Nothing is too hard for them. Nothing gets in the way of them living that life purpose. And that's really the energy of the fire energy, right? That wood is feeding the fire of their passion. And so they tend to be in this expansive state of joy. And from that place, they're like a fire that's in balance is like a campfire. You want to go sit next to it. You want to be next to that person who's in that joy. You want to warm yourself up next to them, right? It's not burning everything down, and it's not just smoldering. It's steady burning, and it attracts people that want to be around it, right? So when we look at the fire archetype, we're really looking at the ability for people to connect and to be in their joy and to be in their passion in an appropriate way, right? With great balance and harmony. It often has a very playful energy. It can have an excitement to it. It's got a fizz. People feel fire energy all over the room, right? Like you can really feel someone who's living from that passionate place. It is also the energy of love and romance, and it is the heart meridian, right? So it's more associated, though, from a chakra perspective with the root chakra, and the triple heater governs some of that survival response, and specifically the adrenal response. So you've got this connection to the root chakra. But if you think about it, the root chakra is where you really sit into the pocket of what is my deepest desire, my deepest passion, it's the wood that feeds that purpose, right? So you have this deep, the root chakra is really about the safety and security of my connection to others, my tribe. And so when I'm feeling really safe and connected, I can live from joy and from pleasure and from deep desire and then connectedness to others. So the question for fire energy, they tend to question if they're loved, if they're lovable, do they bring love, do they bring joy? You'll hear them kind of questioning whether or not they're lovable. That's one thing to listen for, or core belief like that you might find is that they just don't think they're worthy of love, or they're maybe trying too hard to find love, right? All of those are disruptions. So in balance, they tend to have like a really warm energy, rose-colored glasses, I like to say. Everything is very optimistic. They're joyful. They're just full of joy. They create safe spaces for others to express their feelings. They help others feel happy. So they kind of are contagious to others when they're in that joy and happiness. Joy and happiness are two different things, by the way. Joy is a state of being. Happiness is an emotion. It moves. And so, but you find them together often where there's deep joy, there's often contentment and happiness, right? Well, content is also a state of being, but so they like to have fun. They're associated with, if you think about like otters and dolphins, there's an energy of funness to them. They want to play. They're often very emotionally aware when they're in balance. They're flexible and they're balanced. Out of balance, they can feel very restless. They don't sleep. They can have deep sleep disruptions. That's a water to fire issue. They can look kind of ADD, scattered. They can't focus, disorganized. They get burnt out pretty easy. Think about fire burning out really quickly. They can swing between being happy and sad. They're excitable, but not sustainable in that place. And then they sometimes are uncomfortable with their emotions. They don't want to look at their emotions. They want to stay in the fantasy of everything is great. And so they may have a hard time being able to name what is bothering them because they don't want to look, right? And I'm a fire, and one of my friends, she and I joke a lot about the fact that I'm always like, look over here, look out my window. Isn't it so pretty over here? When like I might have a dumpster fire going on behind me. I just don't want to look at it. I just want to look out this really pretty window. That feels really good, because it can be hard for me to look at my emotions. That's been part of my growth. So the first step to harmonizing fire would be to notice where people are feeling overly sensitive. And so stress is associated with fire. Like we see disruptions, which are going to look like adrenal disruptions or fatigue, and just symptoms of being stressed. When someone's really stressed, it can lead to anxiety and panic, but they can also be stressed without anxiety, right? It's like there's a hypersensitivity, a hyper excited energy to this energy that tends to lean towards a state of stress in the body. So when you're working with the emotions, you're going to see it's stress, anxiety, insecurity. Again, am I lovable? Sorrow, that waffling between, nervousness, that's that extra energy in their nervous system. Unsatisfied. That might be dissatisfied is the word that should be there. Hysterical, right? Like when it's too much, and it goes like people that laugh inappropriately, in grief or in the wrong situation. That's a fire issue, right? It's like that's the way it comes out. So they just start laughing, right? So and then despair and hopelessness. Again, we see that waffling. And remember, when you're looking at this spectrum of emotions, it's because of its relationship to other elements, which we've talked about. So when you see this is when someone's got this deep stress and anxiety or nervousness that's affecting their metal, then they may waffle in that sadness and that despair and that hopelessness. That happens down in that metal energy. It's the relationship between fire and metal that causes that. So it's starting to think of like, okay, I see this list of emotions, but where do those emotions come from? What is the relationship? Like the relationship between that hopelessness and that stress might show up in that fire and metal relation, because fire controls metal. So if there's too much fire, if you think about metal, it would melt down, right? So it's like there's nothing there to hold it. And that's what leads to that sadness, that hopelessness. So just starting to think about that. And I realize, like, in this course, this is a quick introduction, and I don't expect you to master it. That's why we have like NeuroCohesion 1 and NeuroCohesion 2 is for mastering, but I want you to start thinking about it that way. So when fire is harmonized, though, you do see, again, that love. It comes from that heart-centered leadership. I'm living my life purpose. I live my joy. It's not just a touch happiness every once in a while. I'm living from a state of joy. I easily forgive. I easily let go. I have a ton of compassion. I can be incredibly passionate. I feel secure. I know I am lovable. I love me first. My higher self loves all my parts. And from there, I can love and be compassionate with other people. So again, you're going to look for, these are the areas to notice. So the need for acceptance or the inability to connect or to be intimate, that's going to be remember the hormones of water to fire, that disconnection from their joy. They can't feel their joy, panic or feeling that ADD, stressed, the scatteredness that comes from stress, right? Which can look a lot like ADD symptoms. And again, the balancing is similar for what you've been looking at. You're going to put the meridians, the root chakra, and the other things in there, right? So the next, I think I might save the next two for next week and go ahead and get to the demo so that we have plenty of time. But the next two are the earth element and then metal element. And so next week, we'll kind of dive into those two, giving a little more information about those two. But for today, just kind of touching on that earth element is really, we're moving from fire, and then fire nurtures earth. So the ashes of fire become the earth, right? They become the something that we're going to plant in. And so earth energy is really about caretaking. It's being the garden and the gardener, that we tend to what we need to tend to. And we are deeply rooted and grounded. Earth energy is an easy one for a lot of people because it's really when we're deeply connected, then we are nurturing, right? So, and so we'll go into that more. But what it can look like when it's in balance, it can have, it's all that nurturing, and it's there to create peace and harmony. They tend to be peacekeepers. They tend to be very empathetic. And then in out of balance, we tend to see a lot of worry or predicting the worst, or we also see self-doubt, digestive issues happen here, over-pleasing, overwhelm. So with Earth, as we get into the demo, just want you to think about, like, if they're worrying about something, ruminating on something, or if they're struggling with their boundaries, or if they don't know how to take care of themselves, they only really know how to take care of other people. Those are going to be Earth imbalances. And then last, we have metal. So metal is going to be that energy that is about refinement, right? It's like we take it all down and we begin to refine it. We call it the alchemist. It's an energy that's really got to do with the ability to be in a full state of grace and compassion and forgiveness and spirituality. But on the other end, it can have a lot of guilt, shame, blame, and victimness to it. So if you're listening to someone with metal, and they tend to have a bit of like a, it's their fault, or internal, like if they're blaming something, that's going to create a metal imbalance. If they have grief, that's also going to often create a metal imbalance. If they've got big loss or they're grieving something. And remember, grief can also just be what bothers you. Something's really grieving you, grievances, right? Like what, but grievances tend to be more in that victim mindset of like, who's not doing something that I need them to do, versus grief, the grief of loss, right? But they both live here. And so you really want to be listening then with metal to people that kind of get over focused on the detail, can look a little bit too logical, or like it needs to be perfect and in order. Perfectionism can live here, needing it to be right. They as a type, they can be a little bit hard to lead, because if you're not a great leader, then they will not be able to follow you, right? So it's like, and they can get kind of in their story and not get out very easily. Again, we'll go deeper into those two next week, but I kind of just want to say it here so that as we go into the demo, then what we see, we can kind of talk about it a little bit. So before we go all the way into the demo, does anyone have any questions? I'll just check the chat, make sure. No, y'all are quiet. Okay. Let's see. All right. So let's do a demo, because that's really where we get to really learn. Does anyone want to volunteer? All right. I thought you might. Okay. So let me get my stuff set up so that we can see it. And do the thing. All right, my dear. Do you want to hop out and talk to me a little bit? Let me get you set up. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Will you unmute yourself so that I can get your voice in just a second? And also, I need your birthday. And you can put that in the chat if you want to.
21st of March, 1960.
Oh, that was fast. 21st of March, 50. Okay. Okay. On the count of three, I need your AEIOUs. You ready? Go. 1, 2, 3.
A-E-I-O-U, Araya. A-E-I-O-U, Araya. A-E-I-O-U. A-E-I-O-U. A-E-I-O-U, Araya.
Great. All right. Rhea, do you want me to do a picture or no picture? Picture? Okay. All right. And then while I'm getting that, I want you to talk to me a little bit about, do you have something you want to work on or do you want to see what's there?
Yes, I'm just full of stress and anxiety.
Just a little bit of that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about however much you feel like sharing. Tell me a little bit more.
Well, I'm definitely influenced by my outer circumstances, dwindling finances, so it's financial.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of stress around that, but abundance comes from within me. It's not external, but I'm triggered by my external circumstances.
I think a few of us could probably relate to that. It's probably a thing.
And of
Just for
course, the more I stress about it, the more I attract the more of lack and scarcity.
yeah. So tell me a little bit about like what, just while I'm getting it all set up, because I like to do things different in the world of how we do things, but talk to me a little bit about your money story. What was it like when you were a child?
Oh, I always had something to eat, always clothes, but never enough. I mean, I grew up in a barrio. I think you know what a barrio is, a
Yeah.
Mexican slum. Not, but I mean, I never went hungry. But let me tell you, I've been decluttering, and the scarcity mindset is pervasive. I mean, I got rid of, those samples that you get from hotels, the sample shampoo and soaps and conditioners. I had hundreds of that. And
Right.
it's that scarcity mentality that I'm holding on, and I need to let go of that. It's also pervasive in all areas of my life, not only money, but like clothing or food. Like I'll buy things, I'll store it in the freezer, and it gets food rot or out of date. I mean, I threw out spices that God knows 20 years old, but I've been decluttering, but it's still I could feel the chi in the house. It's lifted, but I
Yeah.
still have that running in my mind.
Yeah.
I'd like to clear that. I mean, that's one of many things. We
Yeah.
can get that sorted. That'd be
Right.
great. Sorry.
So this is such a great example, right? Because there's no way to work with money that we won't have to work with all 5 elements because it's a complete inbound. It happens in all 5 elements. And it's such a great way to look at how they connect and how they affect each other, right? Because there's no way for you to not have an issue that's a fear around money that doesn't lead to the clamping down, right? Like the fear to live your actual purpose because I need to the security issue, right? Like, and then we see it in earth as worry, but we also see it in earth as accumulation because the spleen is the spleen, which for the rest of you is a meridian that's involved in earth. It's really here to help us disperse the chi and keep things moving and keep things harmonized, right? And when we accumulate, it bears a really heavy load. But when we're afraid to let things go, it puts a huge burden on our earth. And then the earth, so one of the things that I teach, I think probably several of you in this class know that I teach some money mindset stuff. And and I do it from a 5 element perspective because I think it is really important to see where the harmonies happen. And definitely in metal, we get a lot of core beliefs and we get them very early, right? Like I have enough, but not more than enough. And when we don't have more than enough, when we're younger, we tend to extra accumulate as we get older, right? But that's going to show up in digestive issues. It's going to show up in weight gain often. It shows up in everything accumulating, everything, because once the spleen can't handle the load, the water, it's actually a liver to spleen to kidney issue. We see it a lot. And the water in the system, it doesn't have any boundaries. There's no earth to control the water, right? So water gets very out of balance. And then we start to see this catch 22, or what I say, we start to see the wonky, right? Like where water really takes over. And so it's like there's extra water in the lymph system, putting extra burden on earth, trying to move that lymph. We start to see things like long-term, we can start to see autoimmune issues. We can start to see thyroid issues. We can start to, right? All of that is related to scarcity mindset, right? So it's like, and I know I said that really quickly to the rest of y'all. I got very excited about just kind of talking about the connection, right? And we're going to look at it on the Genius in just a second, but it's such a great one because one, our money money is such a great teacher, right? But we are also conditioned by the culture to need more, to accumulate, right? But accumulation is actually bad for our systems in Chinese medicine. So it's like, it's harmony. Do I have enough? Am I happy? Is it sustainable? There's so many things that we are striving for that are what the ego wants versus what the heart wants, right? And so it's really going back, and we're going to look in just a second to see what shows on the quantum biofeedback, but it's really going back to really looking at the relationship between the 5 elements, but also it's taking somebody all the way back to deconditioning all of those things that get pocketed up through a whole lifetime of not having enough and having scarcity mindset. You definitely have to do the transformational deconditioning work. That's part of it. That's what the Genius helps us do. But it's simultaneously moving somebody towards living their purpose. Because once you're living in purpose, and I want to talk about this from a 5-element perspective for y'all, when you are living in purpose, you are living from that heart center. Remember, that's wood energy, and it's in the heart chakra. When you live from wood energy, wood controls earth. It creates the right boundaries so that earth doesn't get overwhelmed. And then with earth overwhelmed, no, if there's not enough wood, then earth can get too big, too much earth, right? Like, but what happens with chronic too much earth, which is the worry about it, is you get a long-term depleted earth. And so you tend to get too much wood and too much water, right? So I want you to, if it helps when y'all are working with the 5 elements, make a fist, like this is imbalance, this is too much, and then, well, I don't know how you can make it smaller. Maybe make a loose fist is fine, too much, and then too little, right? So it's like, if I don't have enough earth to create boundaries, then my water, there's nothing to control my water. So my water gets too big, right? Because earth controls water. So if there's not enough energy for earth to control water, it gets too big, right? And often we find that in a wood imbalance, which is the frustration and the anger of being out of alignment, right? So what we're looking at is this relationship between wood and earth and water, especially in money stuff. Where it plays out in their chart is often in fire, stress, and in metal, core beliefs. So you see how all 5 elements are involved? This is such a great example because sometimes it's hard to show people how all 5 elements are involved, but money is such a great teacher, right? So it's like, if we think about the archetype of money, it's meant to flow. It's meant to be in flow. It's called currency, right? So it's like, so we want, if we think about money in the 5 elements, we want to see it moving in harmony through all 5 elements. But it really starts with often having to go back into water. Do I feel safe? Do I feel connected to source? Do I trust that I am provided for? And where am I not trusting? Right? Like, and look, decluttering will show you where you're not trusting. That's such a great example, right? Because if you're afraid to get rid of it, then you're not trusting that you will have what you need when you need it, right? Like, and I'm not saying that you can heal money issues overnight. And some of us, I think, like money is one of my things. It's one of my teachers in this lifetime. It shows up in my human design chart quite a bit. And I think it's because I'm here to help people understand their money, but that means that I have issues with money, right? I've had to go through the same things, right? Like, but I think we're also, if we're living right now and we're living as a caregiver to other people in the sense of like, you're all here because you're genius practitioners, then we are also all learning to value ourselves for the balance between how I'm here to help other people and how I'm here to value myself. And I have found that in the healer community in particular, it can be very challenging for us to value ourselves completely. We tend to give away way too much. That depletes our earth, right? So when we're just giving and giving and giving, that people pleasing of earth, where it's like we're not quite valuing ourselves, then we're afraid to ask. Right now, we've got that fear. We're afraid to ask for what we're actually worth, right? Well, I will tell y'all, I used to charge $75 an hour, which was kind of the going rate for any practitioner where I live. I went to $132 an hour, and I had layers of shit I had to peel away to do that, right? Like, and then I had a coach who challenged me to double that. And I was like, I can't, right? I literally can't. It was like I hit the wall. In my astrology, I've got a Libra. I'm a Libra, and I'm a Libra rising. So I've got all of this balance and harmony and people pleasing and fairness, right? It's like, I can't just double. It hit every one of my deep money pocket issues. And I will tell y'all, if you are trying to harmonize your money, double your prices and see what shows up. It will teach you what you need to learn about what you believe you're worth, right? Like, but amazingly, people stayed with me. Yeah, and I actually started to get more clients because I was valuing myself. It wasn't just that I was charging more and people perceived I was worth it. It was literally me saying, I'm worth this amount, right? So you can see how they connect, right? Like if I don't believe I'm worth it, that's earth. If I don't value myself first because I trust that I'm connected to my higher purpose in my wood, and I value my higher purpose, my life purpose, what I'm here to do, when I'm in my heart-centered leadership, I'm living my alignment because I trust in source. I'm rooted in knowing that I am always provided for. And I can root and rise from there. And when I root and rise from there, then I have the right boundaries. I ask for the right things. I achieve my goals. I stay clear in my mind, right? It gives the earth the boundary it needs without having too muchness to it, right? So that's what I want you to see here, is that this is a great example then of trust. So that's going to happen in water, that I'm here to live a life that's in alignment and on purpose. Araya, you can eat. It's like, I don't want you to feel like you're having to move it around. It's lunchtime, eat. And when that gets wonky, when I don't trust in my highest being as the way, whatever that is to you, your connection to something that's bigger than you, if I can't root in that, then I cannot live in alignment with my purpose. And if I cannot live in alignment with my purpose, I'm going to have money issues. It's not just about blocks. People talk a lot about like the blocks in my money, like why am I blocked around money, or the things that keep me from money. And really that's all very true too. You have to do that deconditioning work. Like I said, like there is such a thing as ancestral damage that gets passed down around money that cellular level, right? Like, and it's also understanding that we often have to deal with the part of us that's trying to achieve something that's from the ego. I want more, therefore I'm trying to get more, and I'm removing the blocks that keep me from getting more, versus focusing on that alignment. What's keeping me from trusting? What's keeping me from living what I'm here to do fully? Like, where am I saying yes when I mean no? So it's the both and of those things, right? And so money is such a great example of how it gets everything out of balance. So from there, I know now it's 10 till, and I get excited and I start talking, y'all, and that's what happens to me. But I do want to take a look at the Genius so that we can see how that looks in the Genius. So hold on, I'm going to go to my screen share. Oh, yay. I like it when technology really works with me and not against me. Not that technology really works against me. It's just usually I don't know what I'm doing, as we know. Okay, so back in here. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to move that over so I can share my screen with y'all. And you're going to come here, come back over here. Okay. So let's look at let's just take a quick look. As you know from your list, there are things that I want you to drop in there once you know what you're working with. Again, always you want to do whatever you do as your priming. The Bioterrain has a great priming vessel that Denise created. That's a great one to use. You can throw in your amino acids, your vitamins, your spinal energy, whatever it is that you do to get that kind of online, get the body primed. I like to say it's priming the pump, letting it know that energy's coming, right? Like you'll want to do all of that. But for today, I actually want to start by looking at what's going on in those libraries. So by now, you guys should all have the libraries. So if you don't have them, then you will need to email me. I'll pop my email in there one more time. The address that you want, that is your Genius address. Because if you don't have it, it means that the address I had was not your Genius address. You might have registered with a different address. But by now, you guys should all have them. They went out a couple weeks ago. So, so this is so great, Araya, because look, this is what we were talking about, right? So water is over energy. When we look at the 5 elements, red, as we know, tends to be like a little too much water and not enough earth. So just like I said, and when we were talking about money issues, is that earth tends to get under energy. It doesn't have enough energy. It's over accumulated. And so it's holding on because of that fear. It holds on, doesn't want to let things go. And that puts a burden on the spleen. And the spleen eventually goes into kind of a chronic state of not being able to carry the load to disperse the chi correctly, right? And we start to see, like I said, physically, we start to see swelling, we start to see sluggishness in the lymphatic system, we start to see maybe possibly thyroid issues or autoimmune issues because the spleen is also connected to the immune system, right? So this is exactly, though, what's showing here is exactly what we were saying. We have too much energy in the water and nothing. So in this example, wood's doing okay. It's at 275, but it isn't enough. Wood is not enough it doesn't have enough energy fully because water's taking up too much. When water takes up too much, it's not feeding wood all the way. So wood's getting enough, but it isn't getting enough extra to control earth, right? It's not extra as in over energy. It's like, but it needs enough energy in wood, enough living in alignment in order to control that earth, right? Or to feed the cycle so that it gets all the way back around. When we're working with the Genius, we tend to work with what's in red first, because I want you to think about red as greedy. The red is where in 5 element work, I don't mean this across your whole Genius, but in 5 element work where you have something that has too much, it means it's greedy. It's taking all the energy out of the cycle, out of the circle. So we want to actually run the red first so that it disperses some of that chi back to the whole cycle. And then we can go back and look to see what's there. So before I do that, though, I'm just going to take a quick aura scan. We didn't do that last time and I forgot, but I want to do a quick aura scan so that we can kind of just run it for even for a few minutes it's amazing when you work with people and you can kind of name what's going on for them in this way. It doesn't take much genius running to help them start to see the pattern and get and to see it disperse, right? So we've got a good pre. Now I just want to point out, we see quite a bit of blue right around in here, and I'm not real great at reading the new aura egg. I don't want to claim to be real great at that, but I do tend to see some things sometimes. And the earth energy is associated with the throat chakra. And so we see a little bit of like some extra energy right here around that blue energy in the throat, right? But we also see this really muddy yellow, which also tells me that there might be things going on with the immune system and the digestive system and some so solar plexus energy, right? So there might be some muddiness in the ability to kind of process the emotions and move them through. And that is what Araya said. It's like it's an issue. It's creating a lot of stress, but it's also feels like a stuck issue. It's not moving very well, right? So if we go back then, and what we're going to do is we're going to add the highs and the lows of what's in water. And then if you go back to your flow charts, and the water was first, I'm just going back here to show you that you have a little protocol right here that you can follow for each element, right? So we want the highs and the lows from the water, and then we want the highs and the lows from the spinal energy. And then we want the top 3 Bach flowers. And then if you have time to look those up, as y'all know, Bach flowers can give you quite a bit of information. We also want to add in those meridians. Now, what shows in the meridian and what shows in the 5 elements might not always line up. Like the meridians that are associated with the element that you're working with might not be out of balance. And that's okay, because they actually kind of live in 2 different places. They talk to like the water element is about the kidney and the bladder, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that the meridian itself is where the problem is. It can be in the archetype of water. And so I just want to note that sometimes it doesn't line up. And this is one of those cases where the kidney meridian itself is fine, and so is the bladder. But so I'm going to add those. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and add the other meridians just because I see some things that will be helpful. What I see, I will teach in NeuroCohesion 1 and 2. But for now, I just want you to know to go ahead and add in those meridians that go. So in this case, it was the kidney and the bladder. I want you to go get the sacral, and you can always add in the other meridians and just hold the intention that that's helping, because it's about the movement of the chi in the meridian system. I want the sacral chakra, which is in, so that tells us a lot too. That actually does line up, right? And then the highs and lows of the solfeggio tones. And now look, I've said this a couple times, but I'm going to say it again. This is kind of a basic protocol to balance water. It's effective, but it's basic. If you happen to know that someone is having other things going on that you want to add in, go ahead. I don't want you to feel like you can only do this. Like if you know something you want to add in, then add it in by all means, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to run the highs for just a minute so that we can then kind of talk about it. But I want to, so Araya, before we do that, last time we were able to really like kind of circle up and really hold the space. So before I do that, I do want to do a little bit of that. So I'm going to ask all of you to get really present for a minute. You might have been listening to me for the last hour, kind of also doing something else, which is great and fine. I happen to function like that. But I want you to bring your attention to right here, right now. And I want, if it helps to close your eyes, close your eyes. If it helps to put your hands on your heart, put your hands on your heart. And I just want you to center in your own heart space, find your own breath, and get really present that we are not just learning, we're also really helping someone. And that's what it's really about. And so we want to be present to the healing moment. As genius practitioners, we tend to kind of load the thing and go on. But I want to remind you that more than any tool that you're using, it's the intention that you bring that brings healing to someone. So I want you to just take a moment now as a group, and I want you to begin to see, sense, or feel that we're in a circle and that we're holding Araya in the middle. And that it's time for us to focus our energy towards her, holding her, and knowing that anytime we work as a group, there's a rebound effect. So we are also receiving a healing as much as we are giving a healing. There's always something in the group for all of us to get. And so just focus on holding Araya for a moment. For this one moment while we run the high energy in the genius. And while that's running, just stay in this circle. Begin to really see that there's a circle of light that holds us all together. And that circle runs through our entire being. And then from your heart, extend that light to Araya in the middle like spokes of a wheel. And I highly encourage you as a practitioner to always hold your clients like in this intention while you're running the genius. Because your intention matters. Your entanglement with your clients matters. And then Araya, we've done a lot of talking about what might be going on for you in the 5 elements around money and stress, right? So I want you to take a moment and I want you to just bring all of that stress and just begin to see, sense, or feel it condensing into like a ball of energy in your hands. And as you stand in the middle of the circle and receiving the healing that we are sharing and that also the genius is sharing. And whatever is the highest good that karmic law will allow that to begin to clear these money issues, these old stories. Begin to see, sense, or feel that you are connected to a higher power, a higher love, a universal knowing and intelligence that's much bigger than you, much bigger than this story that your mind has, that your body is remembering. And just allow that bigger, curious you, your higher expression of you, to just also wrap its arms around all of the parts that have experienced beliefs and systems of oppression in all sorts of different ways in which it's been unfair, unjust, out of balance. All of the parts that feel grief and anger and sadness and stress and doubt and worry. And just wrap it all in this higher knowing, this higher love, this higher compassion. And then for the rest of you that are holding Araya, bring your highest self, your most curious self, your most compassionate self. Are there ripples of the same story in your own life that are ready to heal? And then for the next few seconds, just really allow that energy to move. Beautiful. And now you can begin to let go of the circle, bringing your own energy back into your own space, cutting off from each other, but keep the warm-hearted openness, the compassion and the love for each other. Keep that, but bring your energy back to yourself. And then shaking it off, you can gently open your eyes and come back. We'll take a quick look at the screen. And I just want you to see that what kind of popped up to the top in that water was removing the mental blocks. So that 432 hertz. And then kidney energy, that it's called sexual insecurity or security. And it isn't necessary. When we say sexual energy, we really mean the energy of creativity, right? So am I secure in my ability to connect to source energy, which is creativity? Or is it insecure? There's not a safe attachment there that's been hard to connect. The kidney is also in charge of resourcefulness. And remember, like when I say resource, I mean my ability to connect back to source and fill my own cup, fill my well back up by knowing and trusting. So resourceful. I should put a capital S in there, resourceful. And then returning to spiritual order, returning to the knowing that you're whole, healthy, happy, and abundant all of the time. Even if things are out of balance at the physical level, they aren't always out of balance at every other level, right? And so it's like just returning to that spiritual order. Hearing, so hearing is associated with water, and when water is out of balance, it can muddle our hearing. We can't hear well, and that can be internal hearing, hearing my own advice, hearing my own connection to my highest self. And then the next one is bladder, and that assured. And I want you to think about the energy of feeling assured is like self-assured, rest assured. It's resting in a piece of trust and a sense of I can surrender this worry to a higher power, right? So there's much more going on there. And let's just take one quick look back at the aura, and then I know I've kept you over because when I start doing demos, I tend to go over, but I want you I want y'all to hear as we're doing that, right? Like we're touching into the highest thing that's showing up for Araya around money is trust, right? So her work now is to look at like, where do I need to release and surrender and trust? Where can I lean deeply into this higher knowing? And we see that in that spiritual order, right? We see all of this, the violetness of that spiritual order returning at this level, and really cleaning up. Remember, that was a yellow band of worry and self-doubt that we're seeing come back into that spiritual order, that remembering who she really is and not lost in the worry and the doubt of what the physical realm is trying to tell her is real, right? So with that, I want to just take a second and just check in. Araya, how are you feeling?
Much better. Thank you. Appreciate this.
Was it, do you feel like something's starting to shift? Can you feel it shifting or no? Because sometimes money
Not yet, but yeah. Oh yeah.
So there's definitely, I want to say to that, Araya, there's definitely juice here for you, right? There's been some juicy things that were said, places for you to take your own genius and kind of dig in, right? Like, okay, this is a place for me to really look at what my core beliefs are, to start to really surrender those back. Like, and I would say to you, every time it kind of comes up, like the worry comes up, I want you to just like, what would it take for me to surrender that worry? And what part of me needs to be seen and loved on? I love to do parts work when we're doing this kind of stuff. It's like, what part of me is very worried right now? And how much love does it need for me to surrender this? How much love do I need to give to my own parts for me to surrender this worry, right? Like, and it's much bigger than just that, obviously, but it's a starting point from this perspective. And then we can keep building on that, right? Like this is where alchemical work is really beautiful, y'all, because what we did today for Araya was kind of a little bit of both, right? We did some restorative work for water, getting water to start to move so that she can feel refreshed and resourced so that she can do the work. But the work is still there to be done, right? There's deeper work that's still there to be done. Obviously, that's alchemical. So do you have any questions, Araya, about what was there? No.
No.
Does anybody else
No.
have any questions? I know I kind of rushed the end because that's kind of how sometimes we have to go when I only have an hour. And what I really need is about 4, as y'all know, right? Like, okay. First of all, Araya, thank you so much for being willing to volunteer. It can be a lot to be brave and step out and be like, I have a problem and I'm willing to share it with everyone. So thank you. and keep me posted on how that's starting to move. And as you're running your money magnetizing, whatever you have, whatever libraries you have around money and prosperity, you might have some. And whatever you're doing, start to add in your 5 element stuff and really start to see. Now, I think you have the full NeuroCohesion libraries somewhere. I think probably from the you were in the first class, right? So go look to see if you have them, and if not, I can send them to you again. But I want you to take the that balancing energetic structures library, and I want you to run it like while you're thinking about trusting, because it's so good. It's a stress, that balancing energetic structures is really helps to de-stress the system. So run it in relationship to water again and again and again. And what you'll eventually start to see is that you need to move to earth. Like that water will balance, and now we need to really go into earth. Okay. All right. I'm sorry that I went over, y'all. Kind of not sorry, but also a little bit sorry. And so we will meet next week will be our 5th class. We will look at the other 2 elements a little more deeply, and we will do another demo so that you can really see it in action, see how it starts to move things in action. And then we will talk a little bit more about human design. And then in the last one, week 6, we will actually also kind of focus, we'll wrap it up, and we'll talk a little bit more deeply about human design and why it matters to what you're doing here. So, all right, you beautiful humans, thank you for being here, and I will see you next Friday. Mwah.